We got a good crew. Perfect. We're going to start in about 1 minute and let a few people join, and then we'll rock and roll. Appreciate everyone that registered. We got a lot of questions that were sent to us ahead of time, which was great. So we'll make sure we'll get to those questions, of course. All right. Perfect. All right. Okay, I'll keep asking if you don't mind sharing your video. So if you don't know how to do that, if you're on your computer, you go to the bottom left, you'll see video. It should say start video. Click start video. Be in your favorite room with your most beautiful pictures behind you. That always works. Right, Kev? Kev painted those himself. I love it. Katy, where's the dog? Always nearby. I love it. Cool. Okay, we're going to get rocking here. So a couple of things, just this is obviously a Zoom call and you guys are on mute right now, which is great. If the time comes when we're taking questions or you have a clarification question, whatever, there's a couple things we can do. One, if you look at the bottom and you click chat, you can chat to everyone. So you could chat hello. And I can say hi to Jerry and Gina and Doug, Carly, Bob, howdy, howdy. Mijo's here. Katy and Kevin obviously are here. And then if you wanted to side chat someone, you can do so. You can be like, Mijo, who does your hair? Look at that. I mean, I cut all mine off for anyone that knows me. So that's a nice little piece where if we start talking about something and I reference, say, a website and I don't put it up, someone else can put that in. That's a great way to do that. So we'll go over the rules here. In general, you're staying muted. We want to cover all the topics tonight. And then as we get through this, really the big fun part is going to be when we open it up to Q&A. Okay. I'm going to share my screen here in a second and do some introductions, and then we will get going. You have to be careful because I have the ability to turn your camera on. So you might as well join us anyway. All right. All right. So some of you lucky people will be on my screen. And don't worry, we are going to send all these slides out for whoever registered. If you're on here and did not register and you just joined otherwise, the best way to do is go on to rehabunited.com and go ahead and go to the events section and you can register. And that is not my dog, if you can hear that dog. All right. So a couple things. First and foremost, I want to thank Rehab United. That's obviously us, but more importantly, Mijo is a doctor of physical therapy that is joining us to help answer questions. So he's waving there now. And then of course, a huge, huge thank you to Fleet Feet, who is our absolute preferred provider for all things fitness. So it's not just a running store. Obviously they do running shoes and running fits, shoe fits, but they do so much more in terms of apparel, in terms of the community. So Kevin and Katy, if you don't mind doing a quick self-introduction and just tell them a little bit about yourself. Kevin is the owner of Fleet Feet San Diego and Katy is the store manager, and they are our best resource for this stuff. So just want to give you a chance to say hello.
Sure, I'll start off. Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Lachenmyer, and I am the owner at Fleet Feet San Diego. And obviously, we're thrilled to have you guys all joining us tonight. We've loved working with Rehab on as many different projects as possible, and especially now that everybody's schedules and normal daily routines have been thrown up into the air a little bit. Now more than ever, it's a great time to kind of collaborate with the best partners in the industry and make sure that we're staying as connected and being as good of a resource as we can be for you guys.
Great. Katy, anything to add?
Kind of just to echo what Kevin was saying, we're really happy that we've collaborated with you guys in a time where it's really hard to get in front of people like we would like to in the community. So hopefully our expertise in shoe fitting and sports bra fitting, anything that's kind of coming up when you're not really sure who to reach out to, we're happy to kind of be a resource. So thanks for having us.
That's a great thing that you're saying there, Katy, is just the opportunity to be in front of you and the opportunity for you to ask questions. I actually like this. It's a chance to be one-on-one. In reality, you get to hear everything and hear all the questions and be a part of it. But really, this is an opportunity for you guys to really think about the things that you want to ask relative to running, relative to your training, relative to shoes, and please do so. So a lot of times at the end of these things, we ask for questions and the first few minutes are like nothing. So if you don't mind during the talk, if you could write those things down or put them in the chat. For the next 20 minutes, Katy, I cannot see the chat that well. I can, but it's not ideal because I'm doing the presentation. So if anything comes up, just let me know.
Okay.
And we're going to kind of go through this. So again, I'll do a quick introduction. I'm Bryan Hill, owner of Rehab United and Fit Society, which is a sports performance side of our business, strength and conditioning. And we do live workouts every morning at 9 a.m. So if you're interested in jumping in some of those, definitely reach out to us. As a company, we're highly recognized, not only in San Diego, but throughout the country, as well as Seattle. So we have multiple awards. I'll keep it. You guys can read those later. It's not about us really, but one thing that's unique about Rehab United is we use an approach, a philosophy called applied functional science. That means if it looks and feels and smells like running, in this case, which it should, that's what it should look like. Rehab, performance, assessment should all look and feel like sport. So for running, that's the example. But if you're doing exercises that don't look and feel like what you're doing, for example, a golfer laying down for 90% of their workout, that's not how we function. We look at how the body and the muscles and the joints and tendons and everything function in movement. So that's the best way to describe that. 6 locations in San Diego, 1 in Seattle. You can reach out to us. And obviously right now we can't have as much contact with people. We do see people on site for key things, but right now we're focused on a lot of telehealth just like this. So you can imagine we'd come into your living room, work on assessing your problem, what your injury might be. And then from there, we can apply an exercise program or a strategy or whatever. So we'll do some of that tonight, hopefully with Mijo and I, and kind of show you what that's all about. About me, and unfortunately Mijo is a late request, but this is me. I'm a physical therapist, avid runner, triathlete. I've done everything from 1 mile sprints to Ironmans. I played professional soccer for about 5 years, and then I love helping fitness enthusiasts figure out how to stay healthy. And that's my crew right there, little ones. Tahoe's my little boy, and Parker's my little girl. And I got a wonderful wife, Katy. And then Fleet Feet, I'm not going to steal your thunder, so I want you guys to talk about you guys. But these guys are studs. So you guys take over there.
Sure. So Fleet Feet has been around here in San Diego for about 3.5 years, which is hard to believe that it's been 3.5 years as it is already. If you guys are familiar with Fleet Feet, or if you're not already, there are 180 locations across the country, each one individually owned and operated. So no matter where you're going, you're still shopping local. Our goal, just kind of as it says in that, right in that middle point on that page, is we're trying to inspire and motivate and empower everybody, improving quality of life, whether that's through getting fitted properly for shoes or the right products, to all the fun runs, training programs, and other things that we do to try and encourage, building a running community on sound principles, whether that's just proper running form and proper gear, or just having the right mentality and the right training to get you to whatever your fitness goals are. Katy, anything you want to add to that?
I think the important thing, most of you are here probably already know about Fleet Feet because very few people don't in this community. But the important thing to really stress about Fleet Feet San Diego, and I assume because I've experienced the same thing in Seattle, is just the quality of interaction you get. The personalized attention is like no other. And I just don't send anyone anywhere else because of that reason. Because when you walk in that store, you're getting top-notch service, and that's important. And this isn't trying to be a sales-y thing, but I think it's important to talk about who's talking to you. So when I go on and listen to a webinar, I want those people to be experts in the field. So Rehab United, the best of the best in terms of physical therapy and wellness. And when you look at Fleet Feet, you're not walking in and someone's going, oh, you like black shoes? Katy always talks about the person that walks in is like, oh, I want my shoes to be black. And you're like, okay, that doesn't fit you at all. It doesn't fit your foot. So why do you want that? So I think it's important that you're being put in front of professionals that are the experts in their industry. I talked about this earlier, so I'll be quick. Mics are muted unless you have something really pertinent. Use the chat. That's certainly a way to go about that. I prefer gallery view. So if you go to the top right and you click gallery view, you can see everyone. That's really cool. And again, if you haven't shown your face yet, please do. We love to see your beautiful faces. And then any unanswered questions, we save the chat. The chat comes back to us and then we answer all those questions. So definitely put the question in your chat so we can get to it. And then again, if we don't, we will later. I put this because it happens a lot. Don't take your computer or your phone in the bathroom with you when you take a break. We don't need to see that. And obviously we'll cover a series of topics first, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. And that's the goal here today, to get your questions answered. So top 5 things we're going to talk about today: proper shoe fit, form and key cadence for running, solid programming, injury prevention, which is where we step in, and then obviously working with running specialists. So we'll highlight all those topics. Again, I talk fast. We'll move through this fast. We don't all need to be here till 8 p.m. And again, I want to get through the information. And then once we get through it, you guys can come at us with the detailed questions you have. So the first thing we're going to get to is shoe fit. And a couple things on it before we go there is the stats. The good news we talk about is in running, more and more people are running. So that means there's a lot more people out on the road, of course, getting shoes. And certainly now there's been an uptick in running because it's one of the sports we can do right now. Female runner participation is going up to 43%. That's outstanding. And then obviously our overall 40 plus runner participation has increased as well, another 25%, which is fantastic in the last 25 years. The negative is where we come in, 80% of running injuries are due to overuse. That means we're doing the same thing over and over, and we're not counterproductive, meaning we're not preventing it. That's a problem. And you can see there, women running related injuries, a huge range. And that's the growth factor. So we've seen these massive increases in injuries due to running. 42% of the injuries we look at have been researched. These are 2 or 3 really high participation research studies, one out of New York City Marathon, one out of Boston. 42% of the injuries reported were knee, 17 foot and ankle, 13 with lower leg, and 11 hip and pelvis. So my gut feel is every single one of you right now is going, yep, I had a knee, I currently have a knee injury, or I have something. So start thinking about the things you're doing and the questions you want to ask around those injuries. Again, here you are. When we talk about the knee injuries, we're talking about patellofemoral syndrome. We're talking about IT band pain, sprains and strains, obviously, stress syndromes, shin splints, muscle pulls. And of course, we have stress fractures, plantar fasciitis, and Achilles tendinopathies. So I'm not going to go into all those things tonight because that would take us about, I don't know, 2-3 years. But the point in that is if these are things that are bothering you, let's talk about how we can prevent them because they are preventable when we do the right things. And a lot of this is going to be common sense. Now we look at the why behind the injuries. Essentially, the intrinsic risk factors are the obvious. Have we had an injury before? What is our age group? How well do we prepare for the run? And what are our biomechanics? I put that last, but it really should be first. How good is our running form? And when we assess running form, we're often finding the problem. And the problem is not where it hurts most of the time. It's coming from somewhere else. So we're looking for that root cause of the problem. So again, just because you have plantar fasciitis, the plantar fascia doesn't just magically start hurting. There's something else going on. And yes, we'll treat the fascia, but we got to figure out where that root cause is. Extrinsic factors are obviously our training characteristics, how quickly we ramp up our program. Our shoe wear, I can't tell you how many people Mijo and I look at and say, when's the last time you got a new pair of shoes? Oh, about 4 years ago. That's a problem. As well as the train we run on. Often we see an injury where someone only runs on the road and a friend invites them out to the trail. Certainly cross training is often left to the wayside. Oh, I don't want to strength train. I don't want to get bulky. That is a big problem because when we run repetitiously, when we cycle repetitiously, swim, anything we do over and over lends itself to breakdown. So we need to make sure we're doing some cross training and some strength training. Massively important. And something that most people, although understand it's a problem, nutrition is a mighty, mighty force in all of this. And you'd be amazed at how much better you feel when you put the right fuel in your body. And there's so many theories out there that we don't get into that right now. We have a nutrition specialist that certainly can work with you. But if you have nutrition questions, first Mijo and I will try to answer them. And if we can't, we will simply send them to Suzanne, our dietitian, and she will respond to you via an email with an answer to your question. Sound good? Okay, so here we are. What can you do to prevent common running injuries today? And I'm gonna let the tip number one be led by Fleet Feet, and I want them to tell you what they do and how they manage you.
Okay, Kev, you wanna unmute? I don't mind if we talk over each other.
No, I'm good. I'm gonna just listen and.
Okay, cool. So when we're talking about fitting for shoes, and one thing to note too is just like Bryan was saying, with everything changing and us having to find different ways to facilitate the needs that you'll have as runners and as you're increasing your mileage, there are ways we can still virtually assess the foot as well. So just like this on a Zoom call, being able to observe the gait, talking to you about what you're doing currently, if you've increased mileage, different things like that, that can be done in this way as well. So don't feel like you have to put yourself on pause to get these kind of things taken care of. The tips that Bryan has put through here, just like he was saying, and he kind of called me out, I will still let you get a black shoe. I just need to make sure it's the right black shoe. So I can't be having you walking, grabbing stuff off the wall if you've come to me because you're having an injury or a problem. The goal would be first and foremost to make sure the fit and the function is proper. Then we can start looking at some other options. So when we're talking about fit and function, those are two boxes that both need to be checked. If you have something that fits well but doesn't function properly, it's going to not work for you, and vice versa. You need those things to come together, and it's going to be a 10 out of 10. So he's kind of listed on here. You want to make sure you're running in them to kind of get a feel for it. We do offer the ability for you to try on shoes under normal conditions and kind of experience what it would be like to own that shoe. That's an important part of the process, is experiencing ownership, whether it be for insoles, shoes, sports bra, even any kind of like brace or issue that you're having. You need to experience what that's like in the activity that you're doing it in. Just like Bryan said, when you're doing PT, it should be very functional to what you're doing. Same thing when you're testing stuff out. You shouldn't put your foot in a shoe seated and be like, yeah, I think this will work well for me. We need to see you up and moving and experiencing the shoe. The mileage for shoes, the durability of models tends to be based on the midsole of the shoe or what it's constructed of. And you want to make sure you're being mindful of how long you're keeping your shoes. This is a really big gray area for a lot of people because they think of use as you're going out your front door for a run. And so they're saying like, hey, I wear my shoes maybe 3 miles every other day, like they should be lasting me longer. But what they don't tell me is they're like, well, I went to the gym in them for 2 hours before I went out for my run. When I got back, I kept them on and I went to my kids' soccer practice and I spent about 12 hours in that shoe yesterday. Those are all miles on your shoe and they need to be considered if you're using one pair of shoes for everything. If you're working multiple pairs of shoes into your regimen, you'll get a little more durability out of them because they're not going to be underfoot all day. So it's kind of like golf clubs in a bag. There's going to be different golf clubs that work better for certain things, and shoes are the same way. You might have a great running shoe. You might have a great walking shoe, cross-training shoe. Not saying you have to be a crazy person like me with all of my shoes, but they are very specific to features. And then looking at your gait pattern is what he's listed in here, adapting your running pattern to see how your shoes have worn. If you have excessive wear one way or the other, you're going to be less efficient. That's the easiest way to think about it. So don't get too down into the weeds, but the less efficient you are, the harder you're going to be on your body and the harder running will be for you. I would say a lot of the times, especially depending on what sports you've done previously, your shoes, tend to see people undersizing themselves. So feet are constantly constricted, the toes are retracted in the shoe. That can engage the plantar fascia underneath. It can cause stuff up the back of the leg. So you want to make sure that your shoe is fit properly, making sure the widest part of your foot is in the widest diagonal of the shoe, because the shoe is designed to bend there. So coming across the front of the shoe, there's a wide diagonal, and I need to make sure that the foot flexes there, because that's where you're going to have the most efficiency. If you're sitting high or shy in the shoe, you're going to be working harder to get that off the ground. Your foot's acting like a lever, and you need it to be able to function properly. Kevin, anything else on this slide that you see? I don't want to read off of it straight, so.
No, I think you've done a very good job so far.
Okay, I would say, yeah, and the second part that's on here, having someone assess your foot for whether or not an orthotic is warranted. Most shoes are completely flat inside. It's very two-dimensional. Your foot, of course, is a 3D object, and you would want something that functions a little bit more like that underfoot. We want to make sure, again, it's all an efficiency story, not to sound like a broken record, but that's how it needs to be. We need something that'll keep you engaged with the platform and moving through it in an efficient way, so you're not spending excessive time in one direction or another, because that's going to be the least efficient way. Just like wear on tires. If your car's tire is worn on one side, it's going to throw all your alignment off. Same thing with your body. I think that covers a lot of it, Bryan. Foot shape, yeah. You want to take it, Kev?
Sure. So different things that we can kind of address and things that we can kind of help out with. It's not just a shoe that we offer within the store. Again, when we're fitting people for shoes properly, we're addressing all of the needs that everybody's kind of going through, or any kind of physical ailments that they're dealing with currently, whether that is some of the few more common things that you see kind of listed on the screen right up here, to some of the more in-depth things. Obviously, we're not doctors. We leave a lot of that stuff up to Rehab United to make sure that they're dialing things in a little bit more for very specific pieces, but we try and make sure that we're taking into account any kind of aches, pains, or injuries that you're currently dealing with, and kind of adapting our fits and the products that we present to you guys accordingly. So a lot of different things can be directly addressed by making sure that you're properly supporting the foot with good shape, good function, good support level underfoot, to make sure that it takes care of the whole kinetic chain through the lower part of the leg. It's amazing what a properly fit shoe can do to help with biomechanics, or to limit the opportunity for injury, especially now that we're all kind of putting increased miles onto the pavement, now that that's one of the few things that we're still able to do, you know.
Then last bit here, just to kind of touch on the other side of the slide. Sorry, Bryan, go back one, apologize. It's just a brief snapshot of what we would do normally under traditional circumstances. Having the volumental scanner there builds a 3D rendering that we can visually see on the iPad or sent to your email. Shows us a little bit more dialed in metrics as far as the shape, the volume of the foot, and those kind of things will factor into more of that fit what I was talking about when you're fitting for a shoe. So making sure that your foot fits comfortably, that it's tall in the right places, that it's shallow in the right places, that the heel is the right width. And that's just something that'll enhance the fit. A lot of runners are notorious for just putting up with stuff. They put up with the wrong fit. They assume that running hurts, so they don't take the time to get their gait checked. And running should be something that is a good exercise and a good workout for you. It shouldn't be something you dread or is painful. Usually something is off. You either need to be diagnosed by a PT. We need to take a look at your feet. Running isn't something that should be a sufferable thing. We want it to be very nice for you. So a lot of runners are notorious for just putting up with stuff, and fitting for shoes can help a lot with that.
Sure, and this is just kind of go through one of the services that we're currently offering. Since we're not able to be open for normal business operations, since we are not considered an essential business, for those of you that are looking to get things dialed in a little bit more, we're offering virtual shoe fittings. They're set up via Zoom video calls, just like what we're all doing this evening. You can schedule all of those things between 12 and 4 o'clock every day of the week, just through our website, which is just fleetfeetsandiego.com. But through that video call, we're able to sit down and go through all the things that we just kind of talked about, what kind of activities you're going to be using a shoe for, any kind of aches, pains, or ailments that you're dealing with currently. Bryan, if you want to click on to the next slide. We'll also look at wear patterns to the shoes that you're currently utilizing, even the way that they're wrapping around the foot and where your foot kind of lies in that shoe. We do all of those fittings within our store, so we're always able to check what inventory we have available to us to make sure that we can kind of go through and present different options based off of things that we talk about, just to make sure that we're, again, matching form and function of product with form and function of the foot. Make sure that we're presenting things that kind of help solve for any kind of issues that you might be having. Be able to go through all the different pros and cons or boxes that each option can present, and different little things that can make a shoe either more desirable or less desirable for you, depending on what your preferences are. And then we also offer the opportunity to, between that 12 and 4 period, time period, be able to come by the store to be able to try on selected options that we've kind of set aside for you, or we're always happy to ship things directly to your doorstep, free of charge with return labels if that's necessary. So as much as we can stay connected and involved and give you as close to our everyday in-store experience as possible, we're there to kind of help dial things in as much as possible.
So give you a little story. Often athletes start running after stopping another sport. So I played soccer. Soccer players wear a shoe that is tight as you possibly can get it. So you want that shoe so tight that it's like literally skin. And then I show up to Fleet Feet and they're like, hey, Bryan, Katy's telling me my shoe's too small. I couldn't figure out why I'm getting blisters or losing toenails. Sure enough, I'm getting the proper fit. Now I'm not having those issues. So certainly important to recognize that maybe what you've picked up before or maybe what you've run in isn't always the ideal. And it certainly is best to be put in front of someone, get on a treadmill, let them watch you run. And then we do the same thing. We take the shoe that they give you and then we do a running analysis. But ultimately, the shoe should allow your foot to do what it's supposed to do. That's the most important thing. And if your foot can't do that, then we start seeing problems, okay? Obviously, form is massively important for us, right? So I'm doing a Facebook Live trying to get people interested, so I'm double dipping here. So something that we've spent a lot of time in research on is cadence. Cadence is often known as RPMs on the bike, and it makes sense to people. Oh, 90 RPMs. But so many people, when they run, don't think about cadence at all. And the problem with that is that we end up with a running form or mechanics that put us at a disadvantage. For example, when you're running, and you'll see this link at the bottom, when you guys get the notes, click on that link and you'll watch this running form video. And one of the things that's vital about it is by increasing your cadence, you're getting the foot to land in a better position underneath the body rather than out in front of the body. And that's probably the biggest mistake we see is a foot it lands out in front and we break. It's also where we see the biggest wear on the shoe. Often heel is just getting beat up because of the mechanics. So we want to establish proper running mechanics, and that includes by starting with an increased step rate. So I'm talking 170, 180 steps per minute. How the heck do I do that? I can't count steps for a mile. So that, by the way, is for something faster than a 10-minute mile. Anything slower than a 10-minute mile, you're going to see a 10% drop, maybe in the 160 range. That's fine. But one way to do this is download on your phone or your headphones a metronome that is set at 170 to 180. And they have all these on Garmin, on Spotify. They're awesome. Get out on the track and you can start to put those steps together. And the key is you're running quietly. The form is foot underneath your body, which is ear to hip to foot. That's the strike, even though you'll have a high knee drive. And again, you'll see that in this video. And then the other option, if you don't have a watch, you don't have the music, is to get on the track and count a quarter mile and then multiply that by 4, obviously. So the biggest thing I'm asking my runners to do when I'm having them on a treadmill and I'm filming them is work first on increasing your pace in terms of speed of step without the effort going up, which is very difficult to do. As soon as we ask people to do this, their heart rate spikes. It takes practice. The second thing is film yourself from the side. And if you see every time your foot hits the ground, it looks like a break out in front of you, you're not efficient, which means you should have some drills or at least go after drills to work on your form. Super, super important. Overstriding is a big, massive problem. The other thing we've learned is Google told us to run on our forefoot. The problem with that is that often drives people to run much farther forward on their foot than necessary, and that's not something we want. We actually look at the most elite runners minus a few. There are certainly a few that are way out on their toes, but if you slow the runners down, there's a classic YouTube video of Meb and Ryan Hall running in slow-mo, and you'll see their knee kick is extremely high, but when they land, their foot is right underneath their body, and it's a flat foot, and immediately the propulsion is forward, not a foot being a brake. So that's important. So I highly recommend A, working on your step count, or B, getting a video assessment of your running form on a treadmill so it's repeatable and we can record it. You can simply do this for me and Mijo. Put yourself on a treadmill at home, or your neighbor, sneak into your neighbor's garage and get on their treadmill during the stay at home. Film from the side. No one laughed at that? Oh, you're all on mute. Okay. Film from the side, directly from the side where we can see your head and your foot at the same time, and then email that to us. Bryan with a Y at Rehab United, or Cotic, C-O-T-I-C at Rehab United. We'll assess it and we'll give you tips, or we'll tell you what's going on. Sound good? Cool. Katy, put those emails in the chat box. Okay. Tip number 3, have a plan. I know this sounds silly. Why wouldn't we have a plan? So a plan is vital because we are progressing appropriately. So another thing we see with people with injuries is an increased running volume too quickly. Hey, Kevin, do you want to run the LA Marathon with me? When? In 8 days. That's a stupid idea, and I did that once. Let me tell you, my hip flexor hurt for many, many weeks. But the plan is super important, and there's a lot of options for plans. Certainly, you can pick one up online, no problem. But what we're seeing is, as soon as we get a greater volume than 30%, we have a very high risk of injury. That's problematic. So example, weekly average of 20 miles a week, and we increase it slowly, 22 miles, not 30%, which would be 26 miles. So we don't want to do that. Second is the ratio between acute workload and chronic workload. All that means is your 1 week efforts are way too much relative to your total 4 weeks of time. So we can't be thinking we're going to make massive gains in that amount of time. It's not possible. We're not suddenly going to get magically in shape, and it's a big mistake people make. They're trying to keep up with their friends. Hey, I joined Fleet Feet's running group Wednesdays and Saturdays, and I can't keep up with anyone. The problem with that is now we have an injury, and now you're not going to keep up with the program. That's obviously our problem. Stick to the plan. Amazingly, I spend an enormous amount of time speaking to high level athletes, super fit people, and the biggest problem that they put in their program is no rest. It's 5, 6, 7 days a week, run. There's no undulation, no programming, and then they end up getting hurt. And that's obviously problematic. That makes sense. But we as athletes, we as those who want to be fit, who want to look good in our clothes, we don't like rest. Rest is the first thing we program, and it's massively important. So if you look at any program written by any coach, there's going to be rest first. The next thing on top of rest is listening to your body. I will write a program for a triathlete, for example, and I'll say, you got a 3-hour run, and there's intervals in it at high threshold and recovery, and then high threshold. And 30 minutes in, their heart rate's through the roof. They're not performing well, yet they'll go out and try to just blast through that workout. Sometimes we have to listen to our body, shut it down, call that a recovery day, and then move the workout around. So that's going to be an important step. I highly recommend a coach or a running program. Many of you are already in them, obviously, but super important. And if you want a coach recommendation, I'm happy to give one. So have a plan, stick to a plan. Obviously start in the plan where it's relative and where it fits for you. So I'm not going to start a 16-week marathon program with 8 weeks left and start at week 8. Not my best move. Total miles for that week are 28. That's not where I want to start my training program. Okay. So make sure you give yourself enough time. A marathon, great. 16 weeks is a fantastic program and time length. If you haven't really done a ton of training, you can start there. If you have some experience and you've already been running and maybe there's a marathon in 12 weeks, makes sense. You can start later in the program. Okay. Tip number 4, this is where we specialize: proper warm-up, strengthening program, and a mobility program. It's, again, I think I'm going to use the word obvious a lot, but sometimes it's not to people, which is, first and foremost, proper warm-up for running is not a slow jog. Although that's a valuable piece of the program, it's going to be vital that your warm-up consists of things that look and feel like the sport. Obviously, that's running, but we're putting in key flexibility, mobility stuff. So all of these stretches are on our pages. So Rehab United, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you're going to see hip mobility, strengthening, and a functional mobility program. And I'll show you some of that later. If we have questions, we'll get into some specifics, and I can pull up our home exercise program piece where I can show you some key things. But something that's really important when it comes to mobility and strength is that you move in 3 planes of motion. So that means our body moves forward and back, side to side, and rotates, and that our program starts to look, feel, and smell like running. Again, if your running strength program consists of you laying down a significant portion of the workout, that's not ideal. Our core does not work in a crunch during running. In fact, think of the mechanics of running. Left foot in stride. So picture yourself in the middle, in the air. Right foot's off the ground, left foot's off the ground, left foot's going to land. The right shoulder is back. So what we've done is elongated the core across the diagonal. Well, a crunch does not look like that. Therefore, ideal strength and conditioning programs should start to integrate things that look like running. Squats, lunges, single leg balance, single leg squat are massive because it is a single leg sport. And it's not a 2-legged sport. We never have both feet on the ground at the same time. So that's an important piece of the puzzle. So we're happy to show you those things tonight, and you have questions around that, we'll show you. That 3D mobility is vital, and it's something I would do. So if you're asking me if you're gonna go out for a run right now, Brian, what would you do? I'd spend about 5 minutes before stretching to assess if I have any potential problems. For example, if I do a hip flexor stretch and all of a sudden I feel my right hip is gunked up or painful, I'm gonna make extra time before I start my run. Let's say I have no issues whatsoever in that 5 minutes. I'm gonna go out for a jog, 5 to 10 minutes, typically 10, and then I'm gonna stop and go through my mobility program. That's not always conducive when you're meeting 5, 6, 10 people at a park and you're ready to run, but it's super important and valuable, and it is highly successful in preventing injuries. Mobility before and after your runs. The key is addressing running musculature in an upright running position, which I already said. So upright running position, if you look at this guy here doing his hip stretch, although that's not upright, that still looks and feels like running. So we do a lot of kneeling mobility exercises as well. My hope is you probably have some questions around this. So please either put them in the chat now or be prepared to ask them, because I think most people think, and maybe they've been presented with, hey, I do some hip strengthening and so on and so forth. A lot of that is isolatory and non-weight bearing, and we're going to move 95% of your workout. We're going to move into a functional weight bearing position. Okay. Tip 5, running specialist. Here, the biggest thing I want to talk about is really if you're starting to experience problems and or you feel like you're not progressing, meaning the last 5, 10Ks I've run are all within 1 minute. I don't get that much faster. I don't get that much slower. I'm right there. That would be a reason. I consistently have problems. I have ankle pain, foot pain, hip pain, whatever, and that's consistent. Those are problematic. Or I feel like I can't maintain the training for a period of time. So I get 4 weeks of great training in and then I crash. So we want to give you some advice on those things. I would recommend a comprehensive gait and running analysis. That's someone videoing you, that's you videoing yourself and having someone assess it. Probably the fastest way to get yourself in the right direction. And then custom programming is highly valuable. Obviously, we see significant value when people get a program, stick to it. And we know that word is the number one word is consistency. So I'm a big fan of the 10-minute rule. Whether you feel like working out or not, spend the first 10 minutes doing something and chances are you'll complete that workout. Okay. Obviously accountability right now is really hard for us to have because no one is calling us and texting us saying, hey, meet me at the Cove and we'll run, or meet me down in Encinitas and we'll go run together. Although some people are still doing it, most of us are running by ourselves or the people that are in our household. There is some accountability there, but not certainly what we used to have. So it is nice to have a text group, people saying, hey, are you sticking to the plan? Documenting your workouts on Garmin, on Spotify, or not Spotify, but the other one, orange one, please, someone help me. My brain isn't working. And by putting that down and keeping track, you're seeing that progress. What was it? Strava. Thank you. I could see it and it wasn't coming to me. So I think that's important. I'm not a big fan all the time of getting caught up in the data. I know there are a lot of data people that are just everything goes in and we analyze everything. I believe in it. We certainly make choices off the data, but I'm also just a big believer in you running and starting to experience what it feels like to run with proper form, run with the right cadence. You can start to feel that your fitness is coming and you can start to understand and know what paces look and feel like. So I love when I'm running with someone and they can say to me, we're running like a 750 pace right now. That means they have enough experience either on the track or running to know what it feels like to do those runs, and they can assess their heart rate relative to that. So an important piece of the puzzle. So that's tip number 5. All right, ways that we can help you. Obviously, this is going to feel salesy, so it is. Rehab United movement assessment. We do 60-minute assessments, dialing your running and injury prevention, 3D assessments of your movements, gait, whatever. I'm saying an assessment online. We certainly can do that in person, and we're comfortable doing it in person. If you're someone that stays at home, you're not going out doing huge gatherings, we're comfortable with that. We have the rules we have to follow, but you can run on a treadmill and I don't have to stand 2 feet from you. I can be at a distance, but we're doing these online. So if you have a treadmill at home, we're happy to do an assessment. The virtual shoe fits have been great. People are doing them with Fleet Feet and it's working. They're getting the assessment. They're getting the proper shoe fit. They're seeing the mechanics of that foot. And I'm a bit of a foot nerd. I love feet. I love assessing dysfunction. We call them deformities, which it sounds terrible, but it is actually a foot deformity. And let me quickly talk about foot deformities. Just because you have flat feet or arch feet is not a problem. That is not in itself a deformity. Lots of people have flat feet and don't have pain. Lots of people with high arch and don't have pain. The biggest thing we look at is varus and valgus. So if you take the heel and it goes in towards the midline, what we call that is a varus. If you have what you think of as pronation or the heel going out, that's called a valgus. And we're looking at that heel relative to the front of the foot. So look at the heel. If the heel drops down and in, right foot facing you, if the heel drops down and in, what should follow is the forefoot till it hits the ground. Once the big toe's on the ground relative to the heel is doing this. The foot will be up while the right heel is down. And then as soon as we swing the left leg out in front, the top part of our body starts to rotate. It starts to take my heel into an inverted position, letting my big toe stay down. That's what we call locking up the foot. We're propelling off a nice stable arch to push forward, okay? That is simply dominoes. One thing happens in a sequence to lead to the next. And when we see that not happening, we start to find problems. Heel whips, decreased stride length, hip tightness leads to calf pain, leads to calf pull, so on and so forth. We could go on for days. But understanding that you might have a foot deformity is important. Also understand that not every human being needs an over-the-counter insert, which is why, like when we look at you or Fleet Feet looks at you, they're really assessing, do you have a problem? Or is it just that maybe you're not conditioned or you ramped up too fast in your running form or your running program? Or do you have a legitimate thing that we can control? A lot of that can be controlled with a simple $30, $40, I think, Kev, over-the-counter insert. But they have a system that will tell us that, and we also analyze and assess feet to make sure you don't have that dysfunction. It's amazing how many people have had low back pain for 5 years, and we figure out they have a forefoot varus or a forefoot valgus problem with a medial heel whip, and we understand rapidly externally rotating foot leads to the femur going here and leads to the back starting to have some problem. It's all connected. That song we learned in school, foot bone's connected to the knee bone and so on and so forth. It's true. Biggest thing is there's only one thing touching the ground causing us to move forward, and that's your feet. It's the most important thing we look at. Okay. So if anything, make sure no matter what, you're getting your feet assessed. Massively important. We got a free ebook. You'll see the link. You can click on it. It's tips and running, decreasing running pain. It's an easy read. And then obviously we do customized running performance coaching programs. And right now, the biggest thing we are doing is telehealth injury assessments and telehealth treatments. Previously in California, it was not paid for by your insurance. It is currently covered by your insurance. So if you want to do PT from your own home, you can, and it's covered. There's very few insurances that are not covering right now. That's fabulous for our industry because it lets us see you just like this. And you can imagine people that have been in the clinic and are now doing it online say to us, this is outstanding. I get you one-on-one. You can't go hide from me. I get to have you work on me. The only negative is I think a lot of people really like the elbow in the butt or, the tool grinding on the shin, whatever. I get that, but we can teach you how to do that. So we can show you lacrosse ball work. We can show you the tools that you need. And if you don't have those tools, guess who sells them? Yep, the guy right above me. So, okay. That is me talking really, really fast, and that still ended up with us at 6:47. So thank you for listening. I'm going to stop sharing this, and then I would love it if you guys would ask questions, because if not, I start to get anxious and I feel like it wasn't that exciting. By the way, my brother-in-law is here, and he just had a birthday, right, buddy? And he's run a marathon really, really fast. What was your time in Boston? 2:44? 2:46? 2:47. That's freaking fast. And the guy is in a major heavy metal band. So I'm stoked that he's here. So it's called Invisigoth. So if you like to rock out when you're running, Invisigoth. They're the #1 heavy metal band in Utah. They're studs. So I had to promote them. Sorry. All right. Question number 1, for cross-training shoes such as Metcons, would you recommend these for long-distance runs such as 5 miles, or are those shoes more for shorter distances? Katy, jump in here with me, but the cross-training shoes are not designed for long distance.
Not even close to the 5 that they've listed there. So much shorter, faster workouts. So something more stationary or static generally, still could be functional, but maybe 400 meter, 800 meter repeat, kind of that's built into a HIIT style of workout. Metcons are designed to not have any kind of encouragement forward, and that's what makes them so great as a training shoe. Is you're going to be more level, your heel and your toe are going to be more in alignment with one another. So when you're doing squats and lunges and these single leg things, you feel more in control. But for running, it'll have the opposite effect. You'll actually work much harder to go forward in that shoe. They tend to be a little heavier. They tend to be kind of stiff. If you're walking in a Metcon, you almost feel yourself kind of slapping the ground when you're walking. And so that's a sign of less efficiency. Kind of like Bryan said earlier, when you're running, it should be a relatively quiet experience. You shouldn't, aside from my breathing, the shoes should be very quiet. So you want something that's going to be complementary to what you're doing. A Metcon will be very slappy, for lack of better term, just very inefficient. So I would say make sure to keep it on the much shyer side than the 5 miles. If you have to run in it, it's the only shoe you've got, I would think of doing interval-based work. So running and then walking, something that's not going to put you at as much risk in that type of shoe.
Great shoe for cross-training because of its stability, right? So
yeah,
many times
lateral stability.
Yeah, we have people put a running shoe on to work out and they end up getting arch pain, big toe pain. So we love it for that. But we don't want that for your long-term mechanics because it doesn't have give and it doesn't allow you to translate your foot forward. So it's super important.
Yeah, and it does have, it's a little counterintuitive with that shoe. It has a very aggressive sock liner that comes with it, like the piece that you normally take out. So it gives the illusion of more support or more structure, but it truly is just to anchor you. That's supposed to be a foundational shoe that when you have weight or anything over your head, that you're kind of screwed into the ground and you're anchored there. And if you think that's the antithesis of what you want for going forward with running. So
Real quick, Bob asked a question. I've read that a lot of people can run barefoot. How does that contrast to finding the right shoe if no shoe is supposed to work fine? So absolutely bare feet, possible to run in. The problem is most of us don't go barefoot all day long and don't have the calluses or the structure to support that. So that's the biggest thing. And if you're someone that wants to train your foot and spend the time building up that stability and that callus over time, go for it. I don't have a problem with that. Katie, I know you went like that. That tells me you want to answer.
This is my jam. Yep. So, I am of the same thought process of if you're on a surface that's very conducive to your natural foot type, which would be more 3D, so natural surface, nothing to do with road or flat, treadmill, anything like that, even track to some extent, although it's forgiving, there's nothing coming up to meet the foot underneath. So if you're on a 2-dimensional surface and you have a 3D foot, that's going to be a bad go. If you're on a natural surface or more forgiving, something that can match to the natural shape of the foot, you're going to have a much better time. So if you do barefoot run, it should be on a surface that's conducive to bare feet. And that usually translates to just not man-made because your foot obviously is a natural thing. Putting on a man-made surface is where the mismatch comes into play.
Question, average miles for shoes.
Blanket 300 to 500. Again, you just have to be very mindful of your wear. And like I said, if you're kicking around in them all day, that counts as mileage. You want to start paying attention to how you're feeling after runs that you've done before. If you're consistently on Wednesdays doing a 5-mile run and you feel solid, and at 350 miles into your shoe, you're like, this should not feel as tired as I feel afterwards. My body's taking a longer time to recover. I'm getting these little aches and pains. That's usually an indicator to you that it's time to get an update for your footwear.
Good call.
Yeah.
Mio, question from Linda was, I'm working from home on a tile floor and she has a gel mat that she used like a commercial kitchen. Anything else you would recommend to reduce fatigue throughout the day on her legs?
Hey everybody, so I'm just going to introduce myself really quick too. I'm one of the physical therapists at the Carmel Valley location. So super close proximity to Fleet Feet. In terms of that specific question, we can maybe go through this at the end here, but there's different exercises that you can work on where you're kind of in a static position, but you can start to kind of stretch out your hips. You could start to stretch out your hamstrings, your calves. Sometimes when you're in a static position for way too long, some of those muscles and the joints start to kind of stiffen up on you. So trying to get them moving as much as possible is going to be super effective in reducing some of that stiffness or fatigue feeling.
Okay, good. I like it. 2 things, Katie, revisiting the shoe width, shoe fit for running real quick, and also any recommendation or thoughts on the Allbirds running shoe.
Okay, cool. So on the width, like how everything should fit for running, you want to think of a shoe being more of like a halo around your foot. So if you're Bryan Hill, you like your shoes to be like this. Like maybe you're not that invested in keeping all of your toes for your whole life. Maybe you don't feel as though you need them. I don't know. I'm not a PT. What I do know is that you want a little bit more of a halo. You want something where you've got about, and now the general consensus is a thumb's width. Obviously, everyone has a different width of thumb. The main point that you really should be focusing on is that the widest part of your foot. So you'll find a diagonal from your first toe to the outside. You're going to have a widest diagonal. And you want that widest diagonal to sit in the widest diagonal of the shoe. That's going to put you in the sweet spot to where you're going to be bending it properly. That usually translates to you having about a thumb's width of space at the end. A lot of shoes are made with what's called a lasting line of the shoe. They used to be a universal, like specific length. It's not as textbook anymore, but that lasting line of the shoe, if you're behind that seam, generally that means you're in a successful place. If you push down on the toe, and you come into contact with your toe before you move past that lasting line of the shoe, it probably means it's a little too tight.
And what about Allbirds? Have you spent much time with the new Allbirds running shoe?
Not their running shoe. The thing I would focus on is looking at how flexible it is, and then just figuring out once you have someone look at your gait, if you can do well in a flexible shoe. That's what I've seen from most of the product is that it doesn't have a heel counter to it. It's more flexible through the back here. A lot of times when you're dealing with injuries or problems, you do need a shoe that has a little bit more dictation from the rear foot to hold you in place and kind of guide the foot in a more efficient place. So if it's really flexible back here and you can push this down and kind of compress it, it might not be something that's great until you had your feet assessed. If you have an excessively mobile foot, you're probably going to need a little more rigidity. And the opposite, if you've got an incredibly rigid foot, we might need to promote more motion. So you just want to have someone take a look at it before going all in on something. Especially when you're going to be spending money to get shoes, you want it to be the right thing, and you don't want to end up with something that you just put up with. Like I said, a lot of runners will just put up with what they've ended up in instead of getting it confirmed.
Bob, that's a really good question. What were you going to say, Katie? One more thing?
I had a shout out in the comments from Tanya, and I was acknowledging that.
What's up, T-Money? T-Money. Bob, that's a really good question. He's asking, you know, super massive Hokas. That's a big cushion shoe, which Katie has one. And also a minimalist shoe. So very little to it. So my quick comment on that is typically I want a shoe to allow your foot to do what it can do and what it's meant to do. So if you have a foot that struggles on deceleration, meaning allowing eccentric load or the transition from the outside of your foot to the inside of your foot, for lack of a better way of saying it for right now, do you want the shoe to do that, or do you want the foot to be able to control that on its own? The obvious answer is I want the foot to be able to do it, but sometimes it can't, right? So the discussion point becomes, do I need an orthotic to do that, or can the shoe do it? Shoe companies are brilliant. They came out and started taking 3 shoe types and making 20 to allow things to happen. So obviously a Hoka allows for a lot more shock absorption. But if you're not someone that needs shock absorption, you actually need translation, you might be better off in a minimalist shoe. The other thing to consider is you might start a training program with a Hoka and finish with a minimalist shoe as you train your body. And I know that sounds crazy because I just saw your face a little bit, but I'm telling you, when I first started running for Ironman, I could never be in a minimalist shoe. I ran my marathon of the Ironman in literally a shoe that was nothing, but it took me 4 months to get to that place. And I had to transition from one shoe to the next, if that makes sense. And Katie or Kevin, I'm sure you have some add to that.
Here we go, Kev.
Yeah, absolutely. And Katie's good at like holding a lot of these things up for us and just kind of giving good examples of different styles of shoes. And, you know, when you get down to it, can you run equally well? Sure. I mean, it just depends on the individual person and what you're looking to gain out of that shoe. Are you looking for something that's going to be a speedier type of fit and feel compared to something that is going to help manage impact loads and wear and tear on the ankles, knees, and hips, especially when you're getting into longer distance races like a half marathon or a full marathon, whereas the body begins to fatigue, you'll need to rely on all the strength and conditioning that you've done in your training leading up, or having something underfoot that does help provide a little bit more support to kind of pick up where the foot begins to fatigue and lack in support. Some people, and it's very much a personal preference thing, some people do tend to gravitate towards that more cushioned and supple, soft, kind of more like mattress kind of sensation underfoot where the shoe absorbs a lot of impact forces, whereas some people like that kind of springier, more responsive fit and feel. Very much a personal preference. There are definitely pros and cons each way. If you're looking for something that's going to feel excessively speedy and nimble and quick, obviously you're going to be in a more minimal or a more responsive style of shoe. Whereas if you're trying to cruise through and just crush out a lot of miles with, you know, minimizing wear and tear, yes, a lot of people end up gravitating towards a more cushioned model. And that's one of the things that a lot of people do when they're training for different races. They're using different styles of shoes, treating them as tools in a toolbox. You may have a different style of shoe that you're using for your shorter, faster strength and conditioning days versus your long runs when you're getting out on a weekend and just, you know, working on cardiovascular training and trying to churn out a lot of miles. Then a lot of people tend to kind of push into something a little bit more cushioned and a little bit more supportive for those types of days. So yes, you can. It's very much, you know, an independent decision on like what's going to be best for you and what you feel most comfortable and confident.
That's great. I think one of the biggest things we talk about is, yes, I emphasize foot, and yes, we emphasize shoe, but we also think about one of the biggest problems we run into is core strength that over time breaks down the longer we run. And then now we can't maintain proper posture. So our foot starts striking in a different place. that doesn't matter what shoe you're wearing, you're going to end up with the problem. So great question. Thoughts on elite level performance shoes like the Nike Vaporfly or the new Tesla shoe or anything like that?
Katie, do you want to do this or you want me to do this one?
Sure, I was going to kind of answer the end of that other question too, because he said the same thing. He didn't really understand race day shoes. So I was going to kind of just tie it all in. So generally with a race day shoe or like a racing flat, if you show up to the race, and you've been training in the same type of shoe from a functional standpoint, so you're training in a neutral cushion shoe, you want to race in a neutral lighter weight shoe. If you're training in a shoe that's designed to be a little bit more durable in certain parts to improve your efficiency, you want to make sure you're still translating that over to your race day. So you want something that's going to still be a lighter weight shoe, but still has some structure or stability to it if that's what you put the bulk of your miles in. You're going to have a bad time if you do all your training miles in a shoe that's designed to make up for some of your inefficiencies, and then you show up on race day ready to go 26.2 in something that doesn't give you the right feedback. You're not comfortable in the shoe. It's fit a different way. Racing flats tend to be a little bit more tight around the foot, more like a second skin. So there's a lot of factors that you want to make sure you're thinking of before you show up on race day. So that usually the idea of a race day shoe is that it is a little bit more responsive. It's giving you feedback and you're not sinking down into the shoe as much, kind of like running on dry sand versus wet sand at the beach. You want something that's got a little more pop, a little more snap to it. And that's usually what people are looking for by going to a race shoe. So that's kind of leading into the shoes that someone had referenced, the shoes from Nike, the shoes from Hoka and from Saucony and New Balance. Now everyone has this carbon plated shoe that's literally got a piece of carbon fiber through the midsole of the shoe being this area here that makes it a little stiffer. So it's truly acting like a lever. You're getting less bend to your foot. It's designed to essentially supposed to improve your efficiency, and you need to see if that's right or wrong for you. There's obviously a lot of data out that shows it improves efficiency, a percentage even. The Nike 4% shoe is designed to increase efficiency. The whole thing is it's stiffer. It's like a lever to get you off the ground quickly. There's a lot of rebound, a lot of pop, a lot of snap. When you put something like that on, it's almost like a trampoline underfoot. It's not like a memory foam mattress or something that forgives. Like Bryan was saying, it's kind of locking and loading that foot to go forward. And it takes a lot of the stress off other parts in the body, but they're not durable shoes. That's the biggest thing that happens is people treat these shoes like trainers, and they're designed to be racers. So they have very small mileage to them. If you get a shoe like that, you should be taking some like small runs in, but you shouldn't be treating it like your traditional trainer because you will blow through that shoe.
Bob, that kind of answers your question on people that use one shoe for race day, right? It's not very common because most people aren't buying 5-6 sets of shoes. They're not getting them sponsored and here's some free shoes, right? But there is a lot of value to having a go-to shoe. Soccer players, we always had our go-to game shoe. We would wear it enough in practice, but we had a practice shoe and then a game shoe. It's why all the pros, when they put their shoe on, it's like beautiful because it's brand new, right? Mijo, Lauren's asking, quick, simple, at-home self-assessment to help identify potential muscle imbalances.
Okay, so I'll go over a couple, and then Bryan might have something to add to this, but I'm just going to kind of get into an area where I have a little bit more space here. So one of the ones I kind of starting down at the bottom, if I wanted to look at some of my ankle mobility, I can kind of get into like this half kneeling position. I want to make sure that everybody can see me okay. One thing I want to make sure is that I have the exact same distance. So I kind of get my hand in an L position like this, and I just place it against a wall, and I'm within about a hand's width away from that wall. And I'm going to keep my heel down, and I'm just going to assess some of my ankle mobility. So there you can kind of see my knee touches that wall. And then if I go to the other side, I kind of have that same hand placement. And then I do the exact same thing here. And on this position, I can't quite make it there. So that would be a little bit of an ankle dorsiflexion restriction. And that's something that I would have to address in order to make sure that I was able to load that ankle properly. So I would have better alignment at my knee, better alignment at my hip as well. Another one that I look at, and you can kind of do it on your own as well, is you kind of get down on the ground. You'd lay down, and this is kind of looking at some of your hamstring extensibility. You'd have like a vertical angle here from your femur, and then you'd kind of hold on, and you just would try to straighten out your leg as much as possible. And you can kind of see my hamstring isn't quite there in terms of extensibility. So that would be another area that I would have to address. Okay, and I would just go to the other side and I could kind of just have a comparison side to side. Those are two quick ones that you can do. Bryan, do you have anything else in addition to that you like to go over?
Yeah, so the biggest thing we always look at when we're assessing someone is generally people have a feeling of where something's a problem. So considering that running is such a single leg sport, a big go-to of mine is a balance reach exercise. So if you were to take, you know, a piece of tape, like athletic tape, and put a big old X and then another X on the diagonal, you know, essentially what I'm doing is I'm doing a single leg balance reach exercise. So I'm standing on one leg and I'm squatting while I'm reaching out to touch a mark way out in front. And what I'm looking for is the ability of a couple things. One, it's assessing ankle mobility, just like Mijo talked about. The next thing it's assessing is whether or not I have the knee control to get in this position. And what we'll see often is a valgus stress followed by a hip rotation. And that valgus rotation is not good. That means we're lacking the ability to decelerate internal rotation. Not good over time. The other thing you're seeing is that big Q angle. So my hip is way outside, my knee inside, and my ankle's outside. That is too much motion. So that would be the first test I would do. Then I would do the exact same leg out to the side, and I would do it out what we call a back diagonal. So that's a stability exercise to assess single leg strength, right? So that's part one. If we can't do that balance, then we would do the exact same thing with a toe touch. So the foot's actually touching the ground, and I'm seeing if I can get through it. So that gives me ankle, knee focus with a little bit of hip. And then I would do the same thing on the right leg. Now, if I do my left leg and I can touch 24 inches out in front of me, but I can't do 18 inches with the other leg, that's a problem, right? So I'm seeing that imbalance immediately. The next thing I look at is the number one thing that we see in runners is the lack of hip extension. That's this position, the ability for us to have stride length, right? So when we lose hip extension, lots of crappy things happen. We get excessive pelvic rotation. That tends to cause IT band tightness. If my hip can stabilize and my pelvis stays, then my foot starts to whip out, which we see if someone's running behind us. Man, I need like a videographer. Hold on. I need someone to be like here with a camera. So if I'm in this position and I see this medial whip, I'm looking at that assessment as well. So how do we get to the hip? How do we assess the hip? Is we do a simple hip excursion test, okay? It's very simple. Hard always to assess yourself on this other than the fact that you can feel is I'm standing on this leg, initially toe touching, and I'm gonna put my arms overhead and I'm leaning my belly button forward, and then I'm reaching my hands out in front and I'm pushing my hip back. And I'm seeing what kind of hip mobility I have. Next thing I'm looking at is side to side. And then the third one I'm doing is rotation. I'm gonna compare right to left, and I'm gonna assess what kind of hip mobility I have. That's a huge one because if I don't have the ability to get in this extension, lots of problems come with that. And then you start getting into assessing yourself in simple mobility exercises. So if I'm stretching the hip flexor and I'm noticing I can't get in the same position right versus left, now I'm starting to show a problem. So those are things I would do. Final thing, although it doesn't actually represent and look exactly like running, I'm a big fan of the squat test. Pretty simple. Shoulder width apart, see how low I can get. Do my knees stay in the same position? Am I shifted? Am I rotated? And when we see that in a squat, it starts to tell us there's either an ankle dysfunction, meaning our joint doesn't have enough motion, or the hip doesn't allow me to get in that deep position. Everyone here sits probably now more than ever, but when we sit, we restrict the hip flexor, and that hip flexor sneaks up through the spine. Let me show you this real quick. If I can find it real quick. Yep. This is how much the hip is a problem. I keep a picture of the hip on my desktop. Okay. Can you even see that is the question? Okay. So you can see this hip flexor muscle in psoas. It attaches on the backside of the femur. It comes out right through the hip joint, all the way up on the inside of the pelvis. And the biggest problem is it attaches to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on the spine. So when people have hip limitation, they don't realize that they're literally the bone in their lower segment of their spine starts to rotate. That's a problem. What's up, Curbs? And if we can't manage that, now we're running into big problems, because what we look at is hip tightness goes up the chain. We start having back impingement, pain, whatever, or we work our way down and we start to get IT band, quad strain, hamstring strain, calf strain, so on and so forth. So super, super important to mobilize that. And what I'll tell you is it's not just about stretching. So you might take a supernova ball or a massage ball, and you're going to put that right in the front of your hip, and you're going to lay on it and grind and do all sorts of stretches there. That would be one strategy. You're going to go through a whole 3D hip flexor mobility program as well. So those are super, super important for you to kind of get at assessing those imbalances. And that was a little long-winded, but sometimes that happens. Is that helpful, Lauren? Good. All right. Any other questions? Come on, we'll take a few more. Okay, Jerry, here we go. 40-year-old novice to intermediate runner. Notice my left foot feeling more comfortable in a 10.5, while my right foot seems to be better in a 10. Is it possible? Imagination, different size feet. How important is that? And you're very welcome on the clinic.
Okay, I'll take it. It's not your imagination. It's very, very common to have different sized feet. It's actually the more likely thing. It's very rare to have the same size. If someone's the same size, I do like a big confetti thing. We throw a big party because it's such a rare occurrence. The main thing is, though, it's only about a 0.5 centimeter difference in size. So I'm not sure if it's truly enough to completely disrupt what you have going on. It could be more of a volume issue. So maybe you're taking up more room in the shoe versus just the length. So it could be more, it sounds kind of silly, but we could be taking more into consideration the volume of sock you're wearing, and you could mismatch your sock. That would be the more likely thing to do before mismatching a shoe. It's really under, like, if people don't consider socks to be an important feature of what they're trying to function in. And if you can take up more volume in a shoe versus another by adding a thicker sock or taking volume away with a thinner one, that could be a really good solution for you. So I don't think it's your imagination. I'm not sure if it's something that would necessarily make or break, but it could be something that could be fixed easier with volume exchange versus change of length. So hopefully that's helpful.
That's good. Someone asked me a question about breathing, and that's an important piece of this. Here's the hard part about breathing is we teach multiple variations and multiple patterns of breathing, right? And when we talk about, first and foremost, typically research shows in through the nose, out through the mouth. What we find is the greater the effort, the higher the heart rate, there's a percentage typically when people start becoming mouth breathers. And that's somewhere in that 80, the research showed 88%, but call it 85 to 90% effort. Now we turn into a mouth breather. And the problem in that situation, we don't have the filter of our nose and so forth, but we find oxygenation is better through the nose. We were meant to breathe through our nose. And we train people to do so. So some of it is being conscious of it when you're running, right? The problem again is if we're running a 5K and we're all out and we're just, right? As soon as we go to mouth breathing, often we're just breathing from the upper lung and we're not getting, full rhythm there. The other thing that I've coached people on, and by no means am I an expert in this, but is getting rhythmic breathing relative to your stride, right? So one of the things we do is take that 170, 180 RPMs and maybe on a track, you're doing that cadence, working on the cadence, and then working on the rhythm of your breathing to align with your cadence. And it's much easier to practice and talk about it while we're running, but it's certainly something that is worth doing so. So again, I'm not an expert in breathing, but we've done enough research and worked with enough runners, athletes that we work on that. So I even talk to people that do 2 inhales to 1 out exhale, believe it or not. But we do know that if we're not getting enough CO2 out, much harder to get air in, right? So one of the biggest things we find is people aren't actually exhaling very well. So they're doing a lot of breathing and it's shallow versus having a rhythm of breathing, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Cool. Would you all think this was helpful? Beneficial? Cool. Again, I'm going to tell you this, if you didn't register and somehow got the link, which is possible, go ahead and shoot me an email. I'll make sure you get the email of the notes, all right? And again, we have track of all you, and you probably saw this where we're raffling off some stuff. So you'll hear from us, I think, in less than a week. So we'll be reaching out to you. So if you didn't register, you might want to email because there's some good prizes, shoes and massager. So pretty cool. Thanks for joining us. Just so you guys know, anyone on the call, there is a podcast called The Morning Shakeout with Mario Fraioli. He is an amazing run coach. He has an awesome podcast. Yeah, you better follow us on Insta, Bob. Yeah, go to Rehab United. You have to follow Rehab United and Fleet Feet San Diego on our Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And then I'll back up a second. So there's a podcast called The Morning Shakeout. It's phenomenal. And if you're a runner, you're going to love it. Number 2 is in like 2 weeks, on the 15th of May, he and I are doing a thing like Q&A. So if you're talking programming, there's probably not a better guy out there. He's worked with the top athletes in the world. He used to be with Competitor Mag and interviews all the most famous people. He's just an amazing, when you hear him talk, you're like, I wish I had his DJ voice. And he's an awesome, awesome guy. So come there and we're going to talk about, again, injury prevention and so on and so forth. I'll try to get to everyone because on the registration list, there was a bunch of people that had injuries. And so Mijo and I will go through that and we'll send out some emails to everyone that, you know, what problems are. And then again, schedule your fit with Katy and Kevin. And you can also schedule a telehealth appointment with us. By doing so, if you do any of those things, you increase your chances of winning a $350 Hypervolt massager, which I don't know where I put mine right now. And you increase your chances of winning a shoe or winning a pair of shoes. So please do so. All right, cool. Any other questions? I think Kirsten, you're in Colorado right now, right? Or did you already leave? There you are. Weren't you out for a run during this whole thing? You were outside. It looked beautiful there. I thought it just snowed there.
It did just snow here a couple of weeks ago. I was not out running. I was watching my child.
Oh, well, that's a tough one to do. I know how it is.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. We appreciate it. Obviously, if you could share your experience, if you could screenshot this or tell people that it was good, then chances are we get other people to join. And again, we're always here to answer your questions. The free trial training clinics will resume again. Once we have distancing, I don't see a problem with that. We can stay far enough apart. We're asking about transition training that I do for triathlons. Yeah, crazy world right now, so stay safe. I think the good news is, you know, again, at least in San Diego, we've done a really good job of keeping this somewhat at bay. And it's nice that we've been able as a company to kind of figure out unique ways to stay open, and same with Fleet Feet. It's like without your guys' support, it's really, really difficult. So we're grateful of everyone that's taken the opportunity to either do a telehealth with us, buy a pair of shoes, whatever. As soon as Kevin and Katy said they were kind of taking a hiatus, I think I ordered 2 shoes right away. I was like, give me some shoes. You know, it's hard to do so, but it's greatly appreciated. And a lot of times it's as simple as sharing your experience with other people that that means the most, because number one thing we find when people show up into our doors is they tell us, oh, so-and-so told me I had to come to Rehab United, or, you know, Rehab United said the only place I should buy shoes is Fleet Feet. And I just feel like it's more about the experience you get. And we're unfortunately in a world where we're more likely to put a 1-star rating on a crappy experience than we are about telling people about a 5-star. And I think we just got to live in a world of, I'm going to promote 5-star as much as I can. So if we can be that for you, we're happy to be that for you. We're lucky to have the people we have work for us, and lucky to have partners like Fleet Feet, where there's no trade. There's no, hey, you get this and that. It's, hey, you guys are awesome. Let's work together. So we've been lucky enough to do so. So where do we get to see all the ways to qualify for prizes? Great question. It's, I believe, on the website on our event. And if not, I'll send you that information. So the ways you qualify is liking all our pages, coming to this and registering, signing up for a run assessment or a telehealth appointment, and getting a shoe fit or buying a pair of shoes. And if I missed anything, I can't remember. So cool. Awesome. Thank you guys. You can unmute and I'll say bye. It's always cool. I love to unmute and be like, woo!
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good
Bye.
See you later.
night.